Welcome to episode 6 of Dishing with the Pathways DTMs. My name is David Lintz, and I'm pleased to be your host for an interview with another Toastmaster in our district who has earned the Distinguished Toastmaster designation under the Pathways program. Anna Kaufman was our district director for the 2017-2018 Toastmasters year. Before she assumed that role, she had 3 consecutive years of district leadership experience, starting out as an area director, followed by service as a club growth director and program quality director. She has served in 5 of the 7 club officer roles, including as club president 3 times. She has helped other clubs as a coach, as a mentor, and 3 times as a sponsor. She also helped introduce the Pathways program to our district by serving as a Pathways guide. And she was recognized for her exemplary service to the district as District 31's 2019-2020 Toastmaster of the Year. Anna, welcome.
Thanks so much, David.
I'd like to start by having you tell us a little bit about what you did for your DTM project.
Definitely. The DTM project that I chose was for a nonprofit organization that I worked for. It was a school, and there was a lot of change happening. A new leader had just joined the school, and I was tasked with doing an annual report. This would highlight the accomplishments of the year before, look ahead to the future, include something about this new leadership, and encourage people to donate to the nonprofit. Because it was a work project and I wanted to get my DTM project going, I thought I would just combine the two and get it going that way. And it was a great way to give structure to that work project and also accomplish the DTM at the same time.
Now, I think it's a great idea to try to turn what you do for a living into also a DTM project. It is a little unusual. A number of people do things for the district. A number of people do things as a volunteer for a charity. So this is a little bit different ground, and I can imagine that it presents some challenges to do something as both your day job and your DTM. Can you tell me a little bit about some of those challenges and how you overcame them?
Absolutely. The first challenge I would say is a bit of timing. In the working world, sometimes things go quickly, sometimes they stop, sometimes they completely dissolve. So though I knew that I wanted to keep working on this, there was a chance that maybe there would be another direction I would need to go in with the project or with the work piece. I ended up leaving that nonprofit after I had completed my DTM. But if I had left in the process of it, it would have posed some complicated challenges for sure. So timing is one piece. I would say the other piece is a bit of the confidentiality factor. There wasn't necessarily anything too confidential because this was going to be an annual report that would have been available widely and likely for the public. There wasn't too much of that concern, but I can imagine in the work that I do now and in some other work, in other people's jobs, there are probably going to be more chance that there's going to be some confidentiality risk and some pieces that you're just not going to be able to disclose to the guidance committee or to whoever you're sharing this with. So I think there's a fine line to know what you can work on independently, what you can share, and where things can cross.
So I think this confidentiality isn't necessarily something that would come first to mind for somebody working on something for their company, but certainly it's very important, and certainly you have an obligation to maintain your employer's confidential information, and also, I suppose, to clue them in as to what you're actually planning to disclose and not disclose, and make sure they're comfortable with what you're going to do. So I think it's good that you were sensitive to that. You had mentioned to me that you had to work with a number of your coworkers who were not necessarily reporting to you. So if somebody's your direct report, you have all sorts of tools you can use to motivate, both positive and negative tools. When somebody isn't reporting to you, the number of tools you have and the type of tools you have is a little bit different. So I'd be interested to find out from you what some of the techniques that you used were to address this challenge and how it made you a better leader.
So much about leadership is really being able to make change without necessarily managing people. I'm taking a class right now, actually at work, about aspiring leadership. And some of it is, how do you guide people when you're managing them, and how do you lead when you're not managing people? A lot of what we do in Toastmasters is just that. It's leading without managing. Because even in our club structure, the president doesn't manage the officers. The president doesn't manage the club members. It's the members that own the club. And even though the president has a leadership role, they have to use some of the same tools and skills to be able to get people to do things or make progress. The first thing is really finding out what motivates those people. So just like I would do as a club president or as a district leader with the team, it's the same idea. It's figuring out, what does this person want or need? Are there skills they're going to learn in this process? Are there things that motivate them? How do they like to communicate? If I email them, and do they not respond well to that? Do they prefer text? Do they prefer in-person conversations? Do they want to talk things through? Do they want more of their own ability to run with things on their own? Are they able to get things done quickly and they want a deadline? Are they more flexible? So really figuring out how those people work and what works best for them, and having to flex and adapt to their style sometimes. You have to keep on track, you have to make progress, you have to meet deadlines, but keeping in mind some of those pieces really makes a difference. And a lot of that is just building the relationship and making sure that you're meeting the needs of those individuals that are helping you along the way.
There's a lot to unpack in the answer you just gave. I'd like to just highlight two of the factors. The first is, I think we often use management and leadership interchangeably, and they certainly are related, but as you very clearly pointed out, there's certainly differences to what's involved in being a leader as opposed to what's involved in being a manager. So I appreciate that. The second thing that you mentioned that I think is particularly important is you really have to meet people where they are. You have to figure out what their style is, and to the extent that you can meet them at their style as you talk to them and you work through issues with them, certainly helps to make things go a lot smoother. But it's a skill. I mean, most of us are comfortable within the way we like to communicate, and having to move to somebody else's style, not always the easiest thing to do, but it's something that I think accounts for a lot of people's success.
Yeah. And I would say it's something I'm still learning. These are all things that we only get better at with practice.
Right.
And we talk about Toastmasters as a learning lab. It's a chance to practice those kinds of skills and many more. And being a club officer and a district officer is a great way to test out those skills and and build those muscles.
No, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about some of these skills that you developed in the course of executing the project, and also how they carried over, not just to your Toastmasters life, but maybe also to your personal life or your other volunteer activities.
One of the biggest things that I would say has helped me in other facets of my life has been this structure, this process for creating, building, executing, delivering a project, and thinking about it in different steps, in different phases, in different chunks. So there are lots of opportunities for me to do that at work. There are a lot of projects that I can look at that I can fit this structure into. Sometimes it's easier than other times. Sometimes a project happens quickly and you don't have a lot of time to add in some of this structure. But one of the ways that I think of using it outside of work is our family does a calendar every year. We put family photos, we make sure that everybody's included, we put photos on people's birthdays, we put photos for different holidays. And every year it feels like a rush. It feels like we can barely get it done before the holidays. And then, people don't get it until late January, and then you've missed half the month. So I thought about using this kind of structure and this type of project that the DTM project helps to identify as this opportunity to build this into this family project. So last year, as I was working with my mom on it, I started to implement some of these pieces and try to organize us a little bit better. I won't say that we 100% improved the process, but we definitely made some adjustments that I think made the whole journey a little bit smoother. And just as we're coming into the holiday season now, we're going to do the same thing. And I have some more ideas on how to make those incremental improvements.
We have to do a second interview. I can imagine that would be a very useful template for other people with their families who not necessarily exactly what you're doing with it, but I can imagine that it would be applicable in other places and may be a source of great family harmony for some people. I want to move on to one of the phases of the DTM project, the lessons learned session that you typically do toward the end. So I'd be interested about how you structured it and what value you think you derived from conducting it.
Yeah, lessons learned is really probably, in my opinion, the most important piece, because even if you get through the project, unless you have a lessons learned piece, you won't know what to do differently next time. Even if there's not an exact same next time, you need to do a bit of a debrief to understand what went well and what could go differently. Even just as I mentioned about the family calendar, to know what to improve on, we have to figure out what didn't go well. And this is something that we do in my current work a lot. We host events for our constituents, we send surveys, we get feedback from them, and it's my job to analyze that feedback to see what went well, where we could do better, and what we could do differently, because some of these events are recurring. Some of them happen every few months, some of them happen every year. If we have an event today and then we don't have a next one until 2 months or a year from now, we might not remember all the things that went well or that we want to do differently. So documenting those pieces is really, really important, and making sure that you're not changing too much at once. You want to know what went well and what you should keep doing, and then you tweak a few things here and there, especially if it's something that's happening often. But that lessons learned is crucial to a bit of closure, also to making sure that you're kind of ending the project in a really nice way, almost putting a bow on it, making sure that you know where things went well and what you could do differently.
I think this is an example of where Toastmasters might have been a little bit ahead of the curve. I've noticed that in the last 10 years, certainly, the number of companies that do lessons learned sessions, and in fact, number of individual managers, even if it's not formally in place in their company, think about doing it. And, not just for what went well and what didn't well, but which decisions were good ones and which decisions were bad ones. As you know, at any given time, you make a decision and it was the right one in the sense that it had a higher probability of success than other choices you could have made. But sometimes you're just unlucky, and just distinguishing sometimes the difference between being unlucky and actually having made a bad decision. Often subtle, but something that a good lessons learned session, I think, can pull out.
Yeah.
So any closing thoughts? Anything else you want to tell us? Or words of wisdom, advice?
I think, especially before I did this DTM project, I found it overwhelming, and it can be. I'd say if for people who are struggling with that it feels really heavy and a little bit too much, and that it's impossible to get done in a certain amount of time, I say take it one step at a time. This is a really interesting and can be a really complex and really beneficial part of your DTM journey. And if you stick with it, I think you'll see the value of it. And if nothing else, you can give yourself a pat on the back and get through it and get to that goal of Distinguished Toastmaster, because I think it's a really worthwhile one. And I'd also encourage you to reach out to other DTMs in the district and other districts, to other club members. And just like I did, don't feel like you have to create something from scratch. You can do something that you're already working on or might be working on in the future. Use what you're already doing in your life, in your work, in your personal life, and adapt that to make it work for you.
I would have thought, after having been district director, it would be hard to think of anything in Toastmasters after that you would consider daunting or a huge challenge. So in a sense, it's comforting that for those of us who are finding the project a challenge, knowing that even somebody who's done a number of things you did also finds it challenging means that we're kind of all in the same boat. So good feeling with that one. This was really wonderful, Anna. Thank you so much for telling us about this very worthwhile DTM project, and of course for your impressive record of service to the district. And thanks to all of you who are viewing this for your interest in Dishing with the Pathways DTMs. As Toastmasters, we all know how valuable candid and constructive feedback can be. If you have any feedback that you are willing to share with me, I look forward to receiving it. The best way to reach me is by email at the following address. Until the next episode, be well and keep striving to meet your goals.